Hello, my name is Cal Covey Smith. I'm a graduate of history at Florida A&M University. I graduated back in 2021, and this will be the first episode of my history channel with Master Mojo. That's me. And I'm certified to tell you that this will be 100% facts. Hope you enjoy it. Hey yo, it's Master Mojo, and today is the 4th of July, and it is the 246th anniversary of our nation's independence from Great Britain. See, Independence Day, 4th of July, is more than just grilling out fireworks and just having a good time. There's a deeper meaning to it, and Master Mojo is going to give you a rundown of what the 4th of July is all about. July 4th, 1776, when our forefathers, George Washington, Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison, formed a Continental Congress and signed the Declaration of Independence, with Thomas Jefferson being the author of it, as well as the U.S. Constitution, which made us a full-fledged country, away from British control, which was ran by King George III. But before that, around 1770 was the Boston Massacre, one of the bloodiest massacres in history, which involved colonists, which comprised of the 13 colonies, who were protesting taxes. It was just a riot. Redcoats, which is what the British soldiers were called, were just harassing people left and right, and that's what caused the colonists to start throwing rocks, sticks, anything they could find on the ground, and throw it at the soldiers. And because of this, the Redcoats fired at them with muskets. One of the protesters, Crispus Attucks, which was a 6'5" black man, his background is a bit obscure. It's not proven whether he was a slave or a free man, but because of his size and appearance and being really the only black male there, he was one of the first ones to die. And because of this really sparked a revolution. And come 1773 is when the revolution really came forward. This is when colonists had to deal with, if you think taxes today was bad, British taxes were about triple the amount back then, and we're talking 1700s, so all they had were coins and a little extra stuff as well. This involved the redcoats coming into people's homes demanding food and shelter whenever they want, without a written notice, without any verbal message whatsoever, as well as the taxes for tea, being Great Britain's main product. They were charging triple the amount which they paid in pounds to the colonists. So to protest taxes, colonists grabbed about a dozen crates of tea and dumped it into the Boston Harbor, which we now call the Boston Tea Party. This led to outrage from King George, and this is what led to the Continental Congress forming. So come around 1774 up until 1776 is when it was an all-out war between the American colonists and the British Army. And the thing is, the British had King George III as their main leader, whereas we were just a fledgling, soon-to-be country. We weren't even America yet. It was just the 13 colonies. Sure, we created our flag. It was a big circle of 13 stars. That was the original American flag. But our leader of the Continental Army was George Washington, the man who would soon become our very first president, who was known for his deceptive tactical skills, staying calm under pressure, and just being a real, true leader, which is what led him to be voted as our most revered leader. We also had to deal with the infamous traitor Benedict Arnold, who defected from the Continental Army and went to the British side, and he gave the British all of America's secrets, battle plans, just, the most famous traitor in American history, which is why the term Benedict Arnold came to be. But we actually countered that by having slaves who were promised their freedom in exchange to spying on the British Army. So those who did, they were able to infiltrate, gain the trust of all the main leaders, secretly sneak away, and we would get the British plans. That way we were able to counter when they were going to show up for the battles in Lexington and Concord, which were the main cities where the battles were fought. And the song Yankee Doodle Donkey was actually an insult from British Redcoats. But the term was so funny, we actually used it as a term of endearment and flipped the insult around and created the song Yankee Doodle, because it was to make fun of the Continental soldiers' outfits, which were rather, kind of goofy blue soldier outfits. They were loose. They would wear powdered wigs, kind of dirty looking boots, and they just made a song out of it, saying Yankee Doodle, keep it up, keep it up, keep it up, Yankee Doodle, keep it up, dum 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 dum. And that's where the song came to be, and that was the Continental Army's battle song every time they went to war. So, after the British surrendered in Concord, that's when, King George III had him and his main leaders. They decided to give up. We cornered their army and signed a treaty for British to leave and go back to Britain. And come July 4th, 1776, 246 years ago today, we celebrate 4th of July. And that's been a moment of history with Master Mojo. Like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Master Mojo, there was one thing you talked about that piqued my interest, and it was about using the slaves to spy on the British. Can you talk about that a little bit as to...
There's not really much to talk about, actually, because it's relatively minor in terms of the American Revolution. Certain slaves in the northern countries, they were just kind of, picked out, singled out. If they were, relatively smart, able to read a bit. In fact, if they weren't, they were actually taught to read and understand what the British were saying and write a little bit in exchange for their freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like this, an ultimatum. You either stay a slave, or you can go behind enemy lines, gain information from them, and earn your freedom.
Oh. So pretty much the slaves were used.
Yes, they were used, and they were seen as expendable because this is the 1700s, when slavery was at large before the Civil War even existed. This was over 100 years before the Civil Rights Act happened, before Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Slavery was extreme during this time. So the offer for freedom was extremely rare. So slaves were risking being killed by the British for treachery, but their drive was, okay, I'm risking my life, but I can also be a free man by stealing their secrets and telling America what they're about to do.
Okay, very interesting. How would you say America today compares with America? Well, we weren't America
Now,
then.
we didn't become America until July 4th, 1776, but we were...
Which is our Independence Day, July
Yes,
4th, and
yes.
that's why we're celebrating July 4th, because that's when we gained independence since in
From the British.
1776.
1776.
Okay. But how does America compare today than in 1776? I believe I asked that question right.
Well, to answer that question, we're a lot more divided than when we were almost 300 years ago, because this is when 1776, and before then, people from all over the 13 colonies banded together and had a common goal. We want freedom from the British. We don't want to deal with their king or their taxes anymore. So let's band together, united, which the term United States came from. We became one, not as individuals. And compared today, America right now is divided, has its own sections, political agendas. Everybody has their own thoughts on that. Race, we have our own, racial thoughts on each other, which I don't think we should have. I mean, sure, it's the slaves, they did have an important part at that, which isn't often talked about. But the thing is, America, for anyone who watches this, America isn't 50 individual states, it's a unit. Okay? America isn't just one race, it's filled with multiple races. And we're not just a bunch of individuals living in one country. We are one. We are Americans. And we need to live by that and stand together and not be so divided. It's not the divided states, it's the United States.
Like our, what do you call them? Our, not presidents or kings, but what do you call them? Our forefathers?
Our forefathers, they saw, a would-be nation. They worked together. They were our very first leaders. That's why we see Benjamin Franklin on the $100 bill, George Washington, our first president, on the quarter and $1 bill, Thomas Jefferson on the very rare $2 bill and the nickel. So, and James Madison on the coin dollar. They earned those positions because they saw something that the British didn't see, and the British, they were arrogant and underestimated us, and we defied their expectations and sent them packing back to Europe, and they have tried to defy us ever since.
So in other words, from what I understand, see, I didn't learn this in history in high school. They're probably teaching it now. But from what I gathered, the British did not want to give up the United States because they feel they were here first and that this country belonged to them. Am I correct on that, or?
Well,
no?
Not really, but
Okay, well, correct me.
They did own us, okay?
They own the United States.
Yeah, well, yes, before we were even the United States, we were the 13 colonies, and that was back when, you know, the Pilgrims came here in the 1600s on the Mayflower. And they were the original colonists.
The British were.
Yes.
Hmm.
And so they came from England.
Okay.
Yes.
And so they the British went to war with.
Well, that's when, and before the American Revolution, we had the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War, which was actually how the British controlled America. Because there was the French teaming with the Native Americans, as well as a few Americans from England, from the Mayflower. They fought the British Army, but the British Army won, and because they won the 7 Years' War, that's when they took full control of the colonies for, you know, almost 100 years. And fast forward 14 years later, come 1776, well, 1775, that's when the American Revolution was created to defy the result of the 7 Years' War, change history. Because the British won the 7 Years' War, they had full control, no defiance. And the colonists wanted to change that, and that's what led to the American Revolution.
Which is another episode to talk about the American Revolution, right?
Well, that's the history of the 4th of July. So I hope I informed you very much. And I like to give props to my presenter here for asking very important questions here. Motivational Mom, check her out, check her channel out. She brings a very good word out, and believe me, you'll be inspired.
Okay, Master Mojo, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, that's for another day. So,
okay, you don't want to discuss that with us right now.
So subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.